We're also gonna be broadcasting to folks who may be at home. To tune in, so with that. I will turn it over to the chair.
All right, hello, greetings, everyone. My name is Ken Swanton, I'm the vice chair, our chair is out this evening. And we'll start by taking attendance. Mr. Bennett. Here. Junta.
Present.
And Mr. Igerman.
Here.
And I'm here, that makes 4, so we have kind of a minimum board. Since it requires 4 votes to get something passed, many of the folks tonight have already asked for continuance. So they'll come back at a future meeting to be reviewed. So we'll start by dealing with the first 2 continuances, and I think Attorney Duchesne, you have both of them. 9 Bromfield Street and 82 Water Street.
Mr. Chairman, good evening, members of the board, Douglas Shane from Finner and Nicholson. I have sought a continuance for 9 Bromfield Street, mostly because we were hoping to have a full complement of the board to vote. I know this has been a difficult project, and I know the board is looking for some changes, and my client has made some efforts to try and address those. However, it is still questionable that when you need 4 votes, you're always best to have 5 members, and quite frankly, that is the reason for my request.
So you're requesting a continuance till April 28th. I guess my only concern is, don't we already have 4 things that evening?
I believe we have 4, yeah.
So generally speaking, I mean,
That's up to the board, I guess, in federal.
well, we could see how we could do 5, but we have. First 2 are both asking for April 28th.
I mean, generally speaking, from experience, we would recommend going with more above 5, but.
So we got 1 slot on the 28th and you have the 2 candidates.
I would say if with the board's approval, I would suggest where 9 Bromfield is ready to go. If we could perhaps continue that one to the next meeting, and then I'll address 82 Water when we get there.
Okay. So we're looking for a motion from someone here on the board to continue this to the 28th.
So moved. Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. We'll go down the table here. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Mr. Junta,
Yes.
Mr. Igerman,
Yes.
and I vote yes, it is continued until the 28th. And by the way, I should have announced when I introduce people that we have Andy Borsford here, the planning director, and Gretchen Joy taking the minutes of everything we do.
What date did we continue that to?
We did the 28th,
Thank you.
April 28th. So that's the 5th thing on that agenda, kind of fills it up. So the next topic is 82 Water Street, and you're also representing that one.
I am, Mr. Chairman. Again, especially in light of the fact that we are seeking a variance and a special permit, we are hoping to present before a full board. But I also want to let the board know that we have been reaching out to our neighbors, as most of you are aware. There have been a number of comment letters submitted by our neighbors. And although I have previously reached out to them seeking to meet, discuss the project, I didn't receive any responses over the last few weeks. So, however, we did, as you know, received a number of letters from our abutters. So we would like the opportunity not only to present to a full board, but I'm going to take the time to see if we can't get a meeting with our neighbors and, get in one room and try and work through some of their concerns. I mean, obviously, if this is going to go forward, we're going to need to get neighbor support. So I would respectfully ask that that be continued, and again, to your May 12th meeting.
All right, do we have a motion to continue to May 12th?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And a second, all right. So we will vote.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Mr. Junta,
Yes.
Mr. Igerman,
Yes.
and I vote yes, that's 4. So it's continued to that May 12th meeting. All right, our next topic is 19 Madison Street. So we have Mark McKernan here. Mark, if you could come around to this side so we could see you.
Okay.
I don't know if you have any things you'd like, or you have some things to present, so sure.
Do you want to take?
Yeah.
You want to take the other?
Sorry?
Do you want to take the other? Don't take the other continuance that.
Yeah, actually, a little point of order there. I'm sorry, my colleague here pointed out, we do have one other continuance later tonight, and rather than make that attorney wait until the end of the meeting to make that continuance, would you care to make it now?
Sure, that would be for 0 Parker Street, and we've requested continuance to May 12th.
I think it's 5 Park Street.
It is 0 or 5, depending on.
Correct, it's both, it's either,
It's
yeah.
both.
All right,
0 and 5 Parker Street for a use special permit for multifamily housing.
and you're continuing till what date?
May 12th, please.
May 12th. All right. Would somebody on the board here like to, and is there a second?
Second.
All right, we'll vote this one. Mr. Bennett,
Yes.
Mr. Jensen,
Yes.
Mr. Arderman,
Yes.
and I vote yes, that's 4. Thank you, Attorney Major.
Thank you.
All right, sorry, Mark. So we'll officially open the hearing now. This is for a special permit for nonconformities at 19 Madison Street. So you have the floor.
Essentially, where we want to extend the bedroom on the second floor over the existing bathroom structure. And we got a letter from the neighbor on 17 Madison that they are okay with us attaching to their structure. That's the new structure with the foundation below it. And also attaching to, building on top of my new structure, the sunroom on this way. So we're pretty much bridging the non-conformed structure down below. Bridging over it. So we wanted to also do is pull a bedroom out and add a bathroom upstairs behind that bedroom. I think we'll show them the next. This is just the location where our property is, so where the actual project's gonna go. Essentially over the existing structure. You see that little cricket there, that's a BPM cricket over the neighbor's shingle roof. Because my structure is gonna be a little bit higher than theirs, and they agreed to us doing that. This would be the view from 21 Madison, where it's just gonna be like a 5-foot buildup, 6-foot buildup on top of the existing structure there. This will be from the park, where we're gonna have a pretty much bay window up top. You're gonna have a copper roof on the bottom, like a soffit, and then a copper roof on top of the bay window with a EPDM roof, tapered insulation on top of all that, pitching towards the front of the side of the house this way. Extending the obviously bent, doing the 3-season room up past the ridge line. And this would be now the bedroom being slid over, I think it's 9 feet, and then the bathroom built at the top of the stair landing. There's gonna be like a pass-through way between, like a mini hallway going to the bedroom. What we wanted to do was put like a frosted light in the bathroom just to get natural light into that area. That's kind of from the park, looking towards the house. Essentially, it's gonna be in that alcove area. So in front of the house, you're just gonna see the line, that 5-foot line going back 9 feet. She does that, so. Kind of drew me. This would be great from the property line, showing it down where we're gonna be. Just showing it like the limit of the construction, what it's going to appear.
That was the last graphic.
Mainly exterior.
Okay, so is that what you'd like to present?
Yes,
All right, so the way this works is after you present it, it's a public hearing. Anybody from the public who would like to say anything for or against or ask questions or whatever can do so. And then we'll open it up to the board. We'll ask questions.
Sure.
And then there'll be a deliberation period where we talk about whether we can support this. So we'll start out with comments from the public. Is there anybody here who would like to make a comment on this application? Okay, well, that's quick. So we'll go to questions from the board. Who would like to begin?
I have a question. Can you explain to me the current nonconformity that you're seeking to extend?
I believe they said the existing structure down below is the non-conformed.
Is that the rear yard? Is that?
I really did, I thought it was just the bathroom structure itself because of its age.
I think it's side yard.
Side yard. Can you, so you're extending the current side yard nonconformity upward, is that what?
Yeah.
This plan is here?
Kind of the same footprint, but just going up one.
Upward extension.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Larry?
So you had mentioned that you got a letter from the other neighbor, is this dwelling has two
Yes.
homes,
Castle,
so it's a half house, if you will. Okay,
No, it's just to clarify, it's on its own lot.
okay,
yeah, right.
They have a party,
even though they're connected.
yeah.
It's an interesting dwelling, you can see that, it's one side is on the other side of the fence, if you will. Okay, and they don't have a problem with you throwing in the hole, and you appear just to be building straight up, other than one little cricket that you showed.
Correct.
And are there any neighbors behind you that would be an issue?
That was it's all the park. John Park. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
I don't have any questions. I'll hold for discussion.
So if you could refresh my memory, I think you had a couple letters of support. Maybe I'm wrong here, but have you talked to, I know you've talked to the person that you share a building with,
Yeah.
and they're supportive of your proposal. Have you talked to some of the other people in your,
Nobody has had any concerns with it. We talked to them, I don't have any letters from them. I just thought I needed 17 Madison's letter for approval for attachment. But nobody else has brought anything up in the neighborhood.
but you've let them know about
Oh, yeah, so
it?
we did the the radius and everybody got letters in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
That's what we're performing or wanting to do.
okay,
So everybody's aware of it.
okay. Good. All right, so that we will close questions, and now we move to a period we call deliberations, where each person talks about what are the requirements that you have to meet to get this special permit, and whether or not you meet them, and whether they'd support your proposal. So who would like to begin?
I'll begin. So there appears to be no new nonconformity. There appears to be a request to extend upward the side yard nonconformity. It looks like 7 feet. That addition does not appear to be visible from the street. Seems to be kind of hidden and tucked in there between the two existing elements of the structures there. There's no objection to this. Strikes me, in my opinion, this is not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood in terms of size and scale. It's rather modest in size. Doesn't affect the streetscape, and for those reasons, I would approve it.
Okay, Larry?
I believe it meets the two-prong test, so I'll certainly accept.
I'm comfortable with it too, except I got the two things I want to point out. One is it's a weird situation because the Hale Park is not a park, it's private property. So if there weren't that park, it would be really easy because it's almost invisible from the street. You have to be coming down Madison and see it at a bleak angle. So, you know, it's just a little weird because hail is open to the public by their permission. So, you know, that's why the bathroom elevation that you say is relevant. The problem is, we don't have a rule on this, it was pointed out to me. But, the drawings aren't scaled. So, I mean, I wanna make clear, I'm in support of this. I don't, and it sounds like the other guys are too, we haven't heard from the chair yet. But I don't think we can approve it, we don't have we need to put a scale on the drawing. Doesn't need to be signed and stamped by an architect necessarily. But then we know, you know, then we know what we've approved exactly and everyone goes in peace. So I hate to keep pushing things off. This has happened before, but I'm not prepared to vote until, you know, you get the drawings on there and we'll. I had one question. When you did the, I changed my mind. I do have a question. I understand that the elevation, I'm sorry, the addition is gonna be on top of what's already an addition. So it's not gonna be any further out in the back, right? Okay. So can you go to the photograph, the emailed photographs? Yeah, go to the last one. Yeah, that's the one that confused me, is that black line. Isn't that black line wrong? I mean, the higher one,
This one?
yeah. It's not gonna go, it's not
We're not
really,
gonna go that high now.
yeah, so that's all the more reason why I just wanna make sure. You know, what we're approving is flush with the thing and you give us a dimension. So it isn't, that rendering, I call it a rendering, on my hand, is actually not accurate, it's not gonna be that obtrusive at all, okay. Cause it isn't gonna go up to the eve line. This close to us at the rear line, it isn't gonna go that far, okay.
Would it be all right if I chime in on that point?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just for the office of planning development, we work with the permitting boards. I would agree with Mr. Argument just in terms of the plan, the coherence of the plans. I know you might have had some exchange perhaps with Caitlin, our staff planner.
Yes.
One of the things we try to do with applicants is to point to example plans that provide sufficient detail and coherence as to what's being done. So I don't know what kind of exchange you had. Obviously, she's not with us this evening, so I don't know if we can cover that, but in either case, I defer to the board. Obviously, at the end of the day, we have a zoning administrator and a building commissioner who need plans for their purposes if they can determine what's being done and how that's being done. I would say, from my experience, I would have to agree that it's difficult to document clearly and coherently and efficiently what's happening here for all purposes based on what I'm seeing, just because this is not a great example of what the board typically sees. The board typically sees all elevations for the structure. So it's very clear what is being done, heights and so forth. So while I realize there might be sort of an attempt to, stitch together a couple of details that cover that ground, it is atypical of the set of plans that this board would accept, moving forward to show what is being done. So defer to the board, but it would make a clearer record and more consistent with the way the board typically does things to do that. So.
If I could add, I mean, oftentimes people will hire an architect and they'll show drawings of each wall from the outside with dimensions on it. But not every time. Some homeowners come in with a drawing showing those things, but they put on, okay, that's 8 feet. And this one's 10 feet high from here, and the thing that's missing in my mind in your drawings is any dimensions. So it's, if we were to, and I kind of agree with my colleagues here that I want to improve this thing, because I think it's already been said, it's kind of it's not like it's dramatically changing the streetscape. I mean, you're just going up in the back on one room. But once it's approved, the plan is put in a document and then people make sure it's built that way. Well, it's hard to make sure it's built that way if there's not clarity as to what the dimensions were.
All the framing parts of this have all the dimensions on it. All wall dimensions, floor dimensions, ceiling, roofs, but that wasn't included in the presentation.
Right, I do see 2 dimensions over on the right over there, right?
Right,
42 and 10.
Yeah.
But there's no like width dimension across the top. And
yeah, okay.
I mean, I don't know if, I don't wanna have you go back and come back without enough clarity here. Do you think, your group, Andy could show them.
Well, I don't have the zoning administrator with me. I assume when you were discussing with the zoning administrator, at least the zoning administrator felt the plans were coherent enough for her to be able to determine what permits are needed right here, right? So that to that degree, I think, clearly we've got these plans to work with. Again, I don't think it's typical of the, side, coverage of each side of the structure, elevations that this board typically refers to that has all those details, or dimensions at least, sort of called out. It becomes hard with some of those line types and features to orient oneself as to where things are. So all that being said, I guess, I'll defer to the zoning administrator and building commission what they can work with, and obviously this board has to decide what's acceptable here. I can only say from experience that this board is typically called for a little bit more coverage and, of that, so.
Larry?
Do you have another set of plans that a carpenter would be using to? And it has all the dimensions,
All the dimensions for all the framing of all the walls, interior.
but you don't have them here tonight.
They were not uploaded to the permit record for the ZBA though?
Yes,
They were.
Yeah.
I couldn't open many of the files because they're all in format.
Yeah, that was something else I wanted to address, and I wanted.
You have the same problem? I couldn't open half the files.
Yeah, if I could, there were two things I think that came up here while we were looking for that. One was, I think it might be reference to, so. We don't have a way with our software package right now of precluding applicants from uploading certain file types that may not be as readable for the board or for the general public. We typically ask folks to upload PDFs. They might have been something like a .msg or, message file, something like that. That does create some issues, and I know, although we don't have our staff planner, we typically try to use staff to reach out to the applicants to convey this information. But I did want to flag as well along those same lines. One of the things that I thought was a little bit unfortunate here was, the file names themselves they start with sort of, it must have been a scan of the machine or something like that, right?
Yeah,
The scanner. Unfortunately, that gives an incoherent file name to the document, so, while it might seem like a small application here, when the documents are uploaded, it's not 100% coherent what it's referring to. So it's nice when some other applicants have just put the address as the first, the name of the file.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to note is that because some of the files were rotated 90 degrees, that means that the general public and the board also can't orient themselves without working with the file to rotate it. So if you're updating anything in the future for any reason, if you could, try to do the orient it, that'll make it easier for the board and, prevent some of the concerns that are being addressed here. Just wanted to note that as well.
Yeah.
While they're talking about the plans.
Yeah, I mean, to be specific, there's I was able to open all the files, the bathroom elevation drawing, this one here, doesn't have any dimensions on it.
You're talking mainly exterior.
Yes, exterior,
All right.
because I mean, that's what we're approving.
Yeah.
So you need dimensions on that one. And. See if there's another one.
Probably the one Jason 21 going this way. Yeah, down there.
Yeah, that one too.
Yeah.
I mean. You're gonna get there, but we don't have any dimensions, so I mean, I really can't, I'm not gonna, I can't approve this without.
So it takes 4 votes here.
Yeah.
It has to be unanimous, so it's, rather than belabor this further, I think if you could put dimensions on plans and address the things that Jared and others say, then you could come back and we could then, approve this thing.
Sure. When's the next date that would be opening?
Well, it's basically a month.
No, it also made something to the board. I don't know if you're talking about the May 12th then, is that the date that we're?
Well, if we already have 5 things on April 28th.
Yeah, that would be the May 12th meeting.
Yes.
I did also want to confirm, I just want to make sure as far as procedures and whatnot, just make sure there wasn't any public comment on the road. I don't think that was the case, but.
There was no public
We
comment.
don't take it, yeah, okay.
No, I asked, there was no.
Okay, yeah, so I think the May 12th is the date that we're talking about. Great.
So I guess I'm looking for a motion from a board member here to continue this till May 12th.
Some
Second,
And Larry seconded it. All right, we'll vote. Craig,
Yes.
Larry,
yes,
Jared,
yes.
and I vote yes. So. Thank you very much for coming. Please get the plans with the additional information on them to the planning department, obviously before our meeting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the week before, will be very helpful.
Yeah.
And we'll see you then.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. The next topic on our agenda is an appeal of a determination dated February 27th, 2026 by the zoning administrator that a building at 9 Center Street is exempt from demolition regulations of the Newburyport zoning ordinance, section 27, downtown overlay district, and we have Miss Stephanie Nikitic. So you have the floor.
Thank you. So we can start immediately with the first slide. Andy, thank you. So, 9 Center Street is in a B2 district of the downtown overlay district. Newburyport's historic downtown was famously saved from total demolition during urban renewal in the 1970s. The DOD was unanimously enacted in 2014 to replace preservation restrictions expired in 2005. The DOD provides the greatest protection from demolition of historic buildings in the city. It is similar to the DCOD, but includes design review and the protection of character defining exterior building. In the DOD, demolition of historic buildings is generally prohibited. Every application for the demolition or alteration of a historic building and every application for new construction must go to the Historical Commission for an advisory report to the Planning Board, who is the DOD's SPGA. Demolition excluded from DOD requirements is only subject to Historical Commission review for a 12-month demolition delay. Next. Last December, the zoning administrator determined that an application for full demolition of 9 Center Street required a Historical Commission advisory report or a DOD special permit for demolition and new construction. The first meeting of the commission to discuss their advisory report was on February 26th. The applicant's presentation included an argument that 9 Center Street is exempt from DOD demolition regulation because it is marked MC on district data sheets. The commission did not proceed with discussion or preparation of an advisory report. Then the next day, the zoning administrator issued a new determination that 9 Center Street is exempt from the DOD and requires only an advisory review of the proposed replacement building, along with review for a 12-month demolition delay. This interpretation put 9 Center Street and 19 other downtown buildings at risk of demolition by right after only a 1-year delay. Yes. The exemption of 9 Center Street is based on the definition that a historic building was listed as contributory to the Newburyport Historic District as of August 2nd, 1984. The term district data sheets is not in the definition. However, 42-year-old district data sheets submitted with the 1984 nomination are used for reference. What are the district data sheets? The entire Newburyport National Register Historic District is much larger than the downtown. Its nomination was a massive effort undertaken by the planning office and volunteers. 2,700 buildings had to be identified, dated, and described. Although many were described in detail through inventory forms, most were only nominally described. The district data sheets still used by the planning office today are 326 typed pages with handwritten notes. When the work began in 1980, the focus was on structures built before 1930 because this was 50 years or older, the state and national standard for a historic building. Next page, again. The district data sheets were supposed to be updated to capture other buildings as they aged, but they weren't. The Massachusetts Historical Commission does not have gradations, excuse me, of contributory. All buildings listed in their cultural resources database are designated NRDIS or National Register District if they are included in a National Register District. The 1984 district data sheets, however, include markings of C for contributing, MC for minor contributing, or INT for intrusion based on building age in 1984. There is no record from 2014 that the city council considered any difference between minor contributing and contributing, or even that they were aware of these terms. Next one. 42 years later, we can't talk to the people who created the district data sheets, but we can rationally wonder if there were errors. For example, 17 downtown buildings dated 1930 or earlier were marked MC. These include the Knights of Pythias Lodge, now Agave. Also a well-loved 1796 church on Harris Street, marked MC before it burned down 1 year before the nomination. In all, there are 20 buildings marked MC in the 1984 district data sheets, buildings which are still part of the downtown's historic sense of place. The Historical Commission Advisory Report is meant to address two questions. Is the building historically significant? And what is its relative importance to its setting within the DOT? Note here that 1 Center Street was missed entirely in the 1984 Historic District nomination. This may be another example of district data sheet errors. With the exception of one intrusion, a FA Federal at 5.5 Center Street, built in 2004, modest buildings on the east side of Center Street define its historic setting as the home of small workers' homes. 9 Center Street contributes to this setting. A historical memo submitted by the applicant reports it is associated with William Porter Jr., who lived from 1810 to 1885. He was a stevedore and teamster and had side businesses selling horse manure and running barges in the summer. Porter lived at 5 Center Street and bought additional properties on the street for rentals. 9 Center Street was one of them. After it was sold by his widow from 1901 to 1971, the house was home to a laundress from Ireland, a shoe worker from Greece, a hat worker, a truck driver, and fishermen and machinists. In the 1984 National Register survey, Porter is also associated with Center Street's grandest building, 10 Center Street on the west side. There is no evidence that minor contributing was intended to mean not contributing or not contributory. To clarify this, an amendment to the DOD definition of a historic building is making its way now through the council. It will be subject to a joint hearing with the planning board tomorrow night. The request of the ZBA is to find that the 9 Center Street determination was an error. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll now open it up for anyone in the public who would like to make a public comment. Yes, you have the floor. Please state your name and address.
Tom Culver-John, 64 Federal Street. I served on the Newburyport Historic Commission for 9 years as vice chairman. During that time, we did occasionally see an application, we said minor contributory, but that didn't deter us from looking at it. We didn't treat it in any different manner. It was contributing. We just decided on its merits. I strongly support this appeal. I think it's absurd to put 19 or 20 buildings at risk of only a possible 12-month delay. And I think it certainly belongs in the DOD. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes.
Chris Sawtell, I'm also vice chair of the Newburyport Historical Commission. I live at 29 Summer Street, Newburyport. 9 Center Street is currently facing a complete demolition based on outdated and conflicting information on district data sheets. These were created 42 years ago and have not been updated since, as Stephanie had mentioned. The Historical Commission relies in part on these data sheets for determinations that affect Newburyport's historical assets, and in this case, it's 9 Center Street. If the DDS were updated, the Historical Commission would have another reliable tool to be able to guide the decision process. In my personal opinion, as of now, district data sheets should not be used solely based for the determination of a full demolition of a historic structure. So please consider this a bill.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes. Hectic.
Patricia Peckman, 4 Dove Street. Good evening, everybody, and nice to see you. I've been looking at how the word minor appears throughout the Newburyport Municipal Code in adjective form. And the adjective always modifies, but it never nullifies. So for example, a minor modification is still a modification and it's still an appeal, and the applicant would have to come before this board to be heard and have it reviewed. Minor site plan review is still site plan review. The project isn't exempted from any review. Minor alterations are still alterations. Minor projects in the DOB still need planning board approval. So given how this adjective minor functions everywhere in the municipal code, it stands to reason that a minor contributory historic structure is still a contributory historic structure, even if it's not a major standalone landmark building. But also just in everyday conversation, minor also modifies and doesn't negate or cancel or nullify anything. Minor league baseball is still baseball. I'm not a fan, but I understand that they're still playing by the same rules and it's still a game. Minor music played in a minor key is kind of sad, but it's still music. If I have a minor role in a movie or a minor traffic infraction or a minor injury, right, it doesn't cancel out the noun or the other adjective. I wish I'd been a minor investor in Apple in 1976. I would be a billionaire. When I looked at this phrase contributory, the quotation marks, I think, are just idiosyncratic and not prescriptive. So in section 12-182 of the municipal code, the words approved and prohibited are in quotation marks somewhere in that section, although in other places in the same section, they are not in quotation marks. It's just approved, but not approved. So when we view this phrase minor contributory, either in the context of the municipal code or common sense, it's still a form of contributory. And I really hope that you will agree or agree.
Thank you. Who else would like to say anything? Anybody else? All right, we'll close public comment and we'll go to. What do we do? Let me tell you, when's the last time we had an appeal of this? I mean, I've been here 6 years. I can't remember one.
It does not happen often.
What's the next step of the process here? Deliberation?
Yeah, I mean.
All right, fine. We're on to deliberation.
Yeah, if you have any.
Oh, yeah, we can ask questions.
All right, need more
I
information.
guess it's still like a hearing, huh?
Unfortunately, we don't have the zoning administrator with us here this evening, but obviously she's spoken on the record in terms of her determination, which obviously has been appealed, so that's relatively simple.
All right, now that we have the process clear here, we'll go through questions from the board and then we'll go to deliberations like we do with anything else. So Larry, you look like you'd like to begin.
Sure, I'm just curious, so when all of this historic work was done, did they provide you with any chart of what the distinction between minor and non-minor, if you will, meant? It was their guide, because I agree with the last speaker that minor doesn't mean nothing. It's contributor. It's just the way it is. So I'm just curious about all this. Is there some other paperwork that we haven't seen that would make somebody judge that minor doesn't count?
Not that I know of. So the only thing we have to understand why on the district data sheets, there was MCC and INT is written in the preamble. And there's a slide which sort of blows that language up. Yeah, so that's that box there, which tries to make clear what the document says. It just describes that they were saying it's 1984. We want to capture buildings which are 50 years or older. So they sort of started with 1930. And then they said, okay, well, this building was modified at some point. So they might have called it minor.
Modified between 1930 and 1984.
Well, right, between those, or at some point, if it was an 18, and by the way, just everyone here knows that 1850 is a default date for an old building in Newburyport. Let's say it was 1850, but they decided that something had been altered in the meantime, so that it was an altered historic building. How they actually decided something was MC versus C, because there are examples throughout the district data sheets of altered historic buildings that are still C. And what was MC, we don't know, we can't, I'm sorry, I had a project that Howard Fairweather had agreed with me he would do, to do an oral history with him. He was the historical commission chairman at the time and played a big role in this, and I wanted his history of how all of this was done, because it was a phenomenal amount of work. But I missed my chance. So otherwise, except in this document, we don't have minor contributing versus contributing anywhere.
It seems to be going against the flow. Isn't the city council looking at making like my split entry ranch somewhat historic with some of their changes they're
Right.
moving on to?
No, that's over, Larry.
That's over.
We rescinded that.
I started glancing by and I was like, that looks like my house, just not historic at all. So, all right, well, I appreciate it, but I do understand what the word minor means, and it means something in this instance, so, thank you.
Other questions from the board? Greg or Jared?
Well, did you pull all of the minutes from January through March of 2014? I have some.
Yeah, I did. So I reviewed all of the minutes of the joint planning board hearings. There were 3. I watched the recordings of the city council, both city council meetings when this was passed. The only thing that appears in planning board minutes is a question about, it's a statement about someone, volunteers going to the archives and finding discrepancies or some word like that. So the volunteers who were working in the archives to help with put the DCOT and DOD together were me and Tom Coulterjohn. And what we were doing had nothing to do, we weren't asked to look at contributing versus minor contributing again. That is something I don't think counselors ever brought up. It was a question of maps, because the planning office was making zoning maps of the DOD and the DCOD. And both the planning office and several counselors, including then Councilor Eiderman and then Councilor Quinta, asked us to make sure that the new maps matched the actual record of what was in the historic register district. So we did that, and I still have the letter that we sent in response to the planning office and counselors, and I'm happy to submit it to you. But it was about the map. It wasn't, and buildings left out of it just because of where the map was drawn, and had nothing to do with MCC or INT.
You have anything else, Jared?
No, I don't have any questions on. So I want to make sure we look at all the forest and so.
I don't think, Greg, you passed, right?
I have no questions, no, I understand the issue pretty clearly.
Yeah, all right. I also agree with my colleagues here that it's a pretty clear issue. So we go to deliberations. We have a appeal in front of us and, I believe the staff report has indicated some of the, requirements.
Well, I'll go first because I created this minutes. So, first, I first heard about this case, I had seen on the historic commission, calendar that something was coming in on 9 Center Street. And I couldn't understand why, they didn't have a, you know, a demolition application. And that was the first time I heard about the inventory sheet having MC versus C. That's how I heard it. I want to make a couple of statements, you know, because they're obvious and shouldn't wait, but I'm gonna move to continue this. And I wanna talk to Greg about it, especially who has the most litigation experience. It's not really an extension, you know, the way a court would do, but it seems to me if there's something pending that's gonna moot our decision. You know, we could go through all the legislative history, I'm game, and I have a lot of it. But, it looks like the city council is gonna settle this one way or another. I just wanna observe that. Okay, so here are my 2 statements. First is, I wanna make sure, nobody thinks that there was an abuse of discretion. That's not the standard by Jennifer Blanchet. I don't think it's an abuse of discretion. I think she looked at the plain language of the ordinance. She made a judgment call based on what she thought contributory meant in light of the fact that when, over the last 12 years, staff has been using inventory sheets. They're mentioned later in the ordinance, but not in connection with deciding whether something is historic or not. It has to do with whether we're trying to figure out if a particular feature of the building was mentioned. For example, if there's a garage, looks like a single family home out in the DCOD, sometimes they also inventory the garage because it was a carriage house. And so they look at the sheet to see what was looked at. Again, it's imperfect because sometimes there is no sheet, but that's the one and only place where the inventories are mentioned. And they're mentioned not as the only evidence, but some evidence. So again, I want to make clear, if I had to say, oh, you know, we can only overrule Jennifer if what we thought shit was a, you know, completely outlandish abuse of discretion. It wasn't. She went with the language. It's true. The tables say MC and C, but what I can tell you, and I offered to the chair and the staff, if they want me to do an affidavit, I can. I have no recollection of this issue of MC versus C from 12 years ago. I went back through my notes. There was a lot of attention on who was in and who was out. So for example, Larry will probably remember at the last minute, I had 10 votes. I did not have President O'Brien. I had already done it, and when I drafted it in January and gone through all those hearings, we had an exception for single and 2 family homes, an exclusion that were in an underlying residential district. And if you want to know what that is, those are the buildings that are sort of right before you get to Fair Street, in between State Street and Fair Street. For some reason, our zoning changes to residential about mid-block. And so we exempted them from alteration review, not demolition review and not new construction, because we didn't want them to be less protected than the DCOD. But we knew enough, the 11 of us, that, and I never proposed that they would have to go through review if they just wanted to alter their house. Okay, the problem that Tom had was still alive, we could talk to him. And it probably was even caught on the microphone, because I went up to the dais and he said, hey, Jared, you know, there aren't many of us natives left. You know, and I got a couple people that called me from Prince Place. So there are a couple of residential buildings on Prince Place that were in a downtown underlying district. And they wanted the same treatment as the people in the underlying, like Fair, you know, Hot Source Fair Street. And I agreed to it right there, and we wrote it in, so if you look at the exclusions, that's why. There are a couple addresses where they give the block and lot. The MC thing never came up, and I can tell you that, it never came up, I don't remember it, if I was aware of it, I certainly forgot. There are two other things, like did get a lot of attention from New England Development. I went down to Newton headquarters, I met with their whole brain trust. And they were concerned about Waterfront West and Titcomb Street, where the parking garage ended up going. Both sides of Titcomb Street, because there used to be a radiator building across the street, which is now vacant lot. And I have the emails that I exchanged with them, so my recollection was correct, I looked it up and I have them. There was no concern about the buildings that are MC. And when I looked at the materials here, they do have two buildings that are MC. And I can just, if they had a problem with it, they definitely would have said so. They're not shy. But also, I want to know for what those buildings are. They're on the north side of Pleasant Street. Right next to the Unitarian Church. So the building that's now the Korean restaurant for many years was Cray's Men's Store. Prior remembering. And that's actually, it has a modern facade, but it has the original mid-19th century wall on the west. And when you go inside, they still have a stone wall. It's pretty cool. That's one. And then the other is it used to be the Bon Marché department store. And then there was many things. By the time I was a kid, that was already gone, and it was the general store. But they've actually redone that building since they redid the facade, I remember, and they have tenants in there. It's like a dress shop or something like that, next door to the Korean restaurant. So that's actually what went on. There was discussion of who's in, who's out, but not those buildings. It was all assumed they were in. Another example I can give, I can't find an email, but I do remember there was a different owner of what's now the screening room. And they were bent out of shape because they were in. And that's an MC too. So I do remember that. That's all I can remember though. What's that?
We would never vote to exclude license fee.
No, never. Well, so you can hear from Larry what the guys would have done, but I wouldn't. I can tell you, I would never have excluded the Cray's Men's Store, never. And then the final thing that I think has been forgotten, and I was reminded of it when I went preparing for tonight, is that when I wrote this thing, first of all, the scheme was not my idea originally. The scheme had been State Senator Ives in fall of 2012. When we were doing an LHD. And that's how I first met Stephanie. Many of us wanted an LHD. We didn't get the LHD. But the compromise that Katie Ives and then Councilor Cronin had worked out is that they would just do something like an LHD downtown and then control demolition in the rest of the city. That's where the idea came from. And then I wrote it and I have all the drafts and I showed it to a couple lawyers in town. One of whom has passed away, Bill Harris. He's the one who really insisted that I write those very long purposes and so on. He was right. That was from his federal experience. So it tells you what the intent was, and that's helpful in figuring out whether we wanted MC or. So I point you to that. But what I had forgotten and found is that one of the inspirations for my language about what's in and what's out actually came from NED, because before I moved back from California, their attorney had drafted the Waterfront West Overlay District. That was 2005. And so one of the things that I didn't cover in the thing I drafted, and then the 11 of us all approved, we didn't touch Waterfront West because it already had language. I want to read it to you. It says, and it's never been amended. They've come to us, of course, to amend it So they can build higher, but it's still the same language as 21 years ago. Deeded preservation restrictions shall be provided governing the rehabilitation of any buildings located within the Waterfront West Overlay District Special Permit area that are listed on the National Register of Historic Places and are contributing structures to Newburyport's National Register District. That's where I got it from. Because part of the criticism was, how can you do this under zoning? And I was trying to prove to people we already do it under zoning. It's not, you don't have to do a local historic district. There's no qualification on that contributing, so maybe if they had written in, but not minor contributing, I would have copied and pasted that, I don't know, but the point is, that's where I got the language. And also from my experience, I know about historic tax credits, you know, and I don't remember any difference between minor, it's binary. Either the IRS and the State Historic Preservation Officer says this is an historic building, you are eligible for tax credits, or they don't. They don't say, well, you know, you're only eligible for half the credits. That's not how they do it. You're either it's eligible or it's not eligible, and then they decide certain expenses are eligible for the credit and others are not, but they don't. So I didn't know about a minor thing, but I can't, again, I don't want to blame Jennifer, it's not her fault. It's true that we didn't at the time look at, or I didn't look at the inventory sheets. I don't have any record that we ever did. I was not aware that there was a difference with minor contributory. Here we are. We could really get into the weeds and do a whole, you know, analysis. I do think though, it may sound convenient, especially for my guilt. But if the city council is gonna act on this and moot what we decide, maybe we should hold, see what they do.
Let me just comment on that.
Yeah,
As I
right.
think about it, Charlie. I don't believe that an amendment at this point can be applied retroactively to this application. That would deny due process of law. For sure, I've litigated that issue before and have lost it. So, you know, no matter what this application stands or falls on the law as it is when he submitted that application.
Yeah.
We can't go back and, you know, reinvent the wheel on that. The
Well,
law.
I beg to differ. That may be the law in Rhode Island. But
This
that's
is
not the
federal.
law here.
It's federal.
No,
Well-
no, it's not. It's
I'm
not.
not gonna debate, but if you think that's the case, I disagree. I mean, just.
Well, we should check with our attorney, but we don't really need to argue about
Yeah.
it because it's not really about this particular application that, you know, we would debate the meeting. And in the request for continuation, they've actually withdrawn their request to raise the building. That's what they've said. So, but again, I know you probably have litigated, and it's a good substantive due process claim, it is, but in Massachusetts. The only way that people vest here is by a subdivision map. It comes up a lot. Once we advertise the amendment. You know, it's at their risk that it's gonna pass.
I'll take your point. There is federal law that applies in this
Yeah, I
situation
mean, if
as
they
well.
wanna sue us for that, sure, they can try it, yeah.
They can try it. Yeah.
And again, this is just my faulty memory, but I believe when we were talking about all of the stuff that Jared's bringing up, this going down memory lane. I believe, didn't NED go in and pull a bunch of permits to get in before the laws changed?
They did.
Because of what you're speaking of. So they were trying to get in under the old law.
But you can do that under the state building code, that's the difference between the state building code and the Massachusetts zoning act. State building code, once the application is in and complete, that's the law that applies.
Well, federal constitutional principles govern local zone, Jared. You can't.
Yeah, but
Let's don't debate that.
So,
Greg, I'm just telling you what happens in Massachusetts, I'm just telling you that it's not just me.
If you can point to me a decision from a federal district court that says that you can apply a local zoning ordinance retroactively to interfere.
It's not retroactive, they're not, their application is not ripe until they have the decision.
Well, that may be true, so I'd like to understand that one. What is before us here, Pete?
Just a determination. That's
a
it.
determination, but it arose here in the context of an application. It's not an advisory opinion request.
Correct.
So it is a right issue, and this gentleman has an interest in this ruling.
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with you.
Okay.
I'm agreeing with you. It's right.
Right.
I'm saying we don't have the ability to abstain. We don't. But I guess I saw in the staff report, they use the word retroactive. It's incorrect. The way I understand it, we can get our counsel to advise us. We have a lawyer.
We should have a
Yeah,
lawyer.
yeah, we have a lawyer. He's a good one. This guy Mina out of Anderson and Krieger. You know, is the way I understand it and the way I've always seen it. And done in the last 18 years of practicing in Massachusetts is. There's a bit of a race. If the zoning ordinance is advertised, it's written right into the statute. It does apply to all applications, even if if it passes, if the law passes and is in effect by the time that the board rules, and it's not our ruling.
I understand. I take that point. I don't understand when this applicant began his race, if he did begin his race. So, that's a different issue.
Our planning director would like to chime in here for a moment.
I just wanted to offer respectfully, Greg, I just do want to actually agree with Jared on this, in terms of this particular aspect
It
of it.
doesn't make any difference whether you agree with.
I understand, if I could finish, thank you.
Go ahead.
I will point you to after this meeting if you'd like, and I think Jared could as well, there is statutory language that speaks to the. Whatever we want to call it, retroactive effect. If the council acts on an amendment, it goes back to the first date of advertisement in the zoning act of Massachusetts.
I don't disagree with that. The question is, when did this whole rigmarole begin? That's the question. When did the race begin, to use Jared's analogy? Did it go when the bill was published the first time or not? Or did he apply before that?
You're not hearing.
The permit was not secured. The issue here is that the permit was not secured by the time of the
Permit was
advertisement.
not secured.
Yeah, and that's what the statutory language is speaking to. The permit was not secured, therefore the rights were not vested.
Let me give you an example, Greg, again, because I know there's credibility.
Chapter 48, section 6, paragraph 1. If you don't have your special permit or building permit in hand, then a new zoning ordinance applies at the date it was advertised.
And that's how we do it here.
State law. That's state law.
That's correct.
We also, the attorney for the applicant behind the scenes here has hand up here, and you might be able to contribute. I realize this is board deliberations, but do you have something you'd like to contribute?
Thank you. Yes, I would. I just want to clear a few things up. My client, on behalf of my client, I filed a zoning determination request. Fully understanding that, or expecting that our building would be found to be contributory. I'm the one that did the historic research. I'm the one that supplied all that information to the boards. And the original determination letter we received said that because we were contributing, we needed to go through the process. Very process that you're hoping we go through. That was our application. That was what we intended to do. My client wasn't trying to outrace anything or get in before the deadline. We went through the normal process. I asked for a determination, I filed. Only after it was filed did the question come up of whether or not we were in the right church. And it was presented to me that perhaps we shouldn't be in there, that we are not contributory. We are minor contributory, but not contributory. And if you do your statutory analysis and whatnot, it was concluded, and I assume with council's input, that in fact, we shouldn't have filed that way. In fact, when the discussion came up at the historic commission, now here I am doing my presentation under the, the requirement of the determination letter. And when that topic of discussion ever came up, and things went off the rails. The historic commission didn't quite understand what was happening. Nobody understood what was happening. And all of a sudden, we were bad guys for questioning whether or not, we were in the right church. I just want to make sure we were. What good would it have done me if I got an approval And then someone came back and said, oh, no, you shouldn't have done it that way.
Say, I have a question
So,
for you.
what we did is we continued the hearing to allow this to play through. There was an appeal of her determination. And do you know, after that meeting, we got a new determination. Okay, Jennifer Reed determined to say, you know what? You did file wrong. You shouldn't have filed as a contributory. It wasn't something I asked for. It wasn't something I was trying to see. But when all of a sudden I now have a new letter telling me I have to go under this process that we're not contributory. You know, this is where I am right now. You know, my client's stuck between a rock and a hard place. Quite frankly, I'll be honest, we don't care. In fact, we'd like to see the council fix this so that we can move forward with our project. Okay, we were intending to go under that process from day one.
I have a question for you.
But what we have done, and I'll just finish the last statement, I promise. Someone mentioned that we've withdrawn. What we've done is I've asked for a continuance of both the historical and the planning board hearings. I want them pushed out to give this board, the council, and the city the time it needs to straighten out this bylaw, so that we can then come in as however you direct us. But I will say, I think this is important, that one thing that's come out of this is that my client has now concluded, you know what? Regardless of whether we're under this or under that, I'm no longer gonna try and take that building down. I'm gonna preserve it. We're gonna modify it a little to use it as a garage space, meaning we won't have to modify or change the three sides that essentially face the street. We're gonna put the door on the back side, the building will be preserved. But I still need to know whether I go down that way, down the process, as either a contributing or non-contributing structure. So believe me, my client has no play in trying to manipulate anything or anything else. We've taken a step back and given the city the understanding that regardless of how we're told to go forward in the future, we're not gonna propose taking that structure down. So we're just a bystander here waiting for you guys to tell us, how do we finish this process?
So my question for you is, you say you're willing to continue this so people can figure it out. And one of my colleagues said the right group to figure this out, the better group to figure this out is the city council just makes that change. So are you willing to continue this to give the city council time to do that? Is that
We've
what?
already done,
So you continued it to when?
May,
We, sorry, just to clarify, we had received the request late today, right,
Yeah.
this afternoon, to request that material, for this application that would be to the planning board and the NHC for review into May.
yeah, because we assume the council would potentially take this up in early May.
And
Now, if it turns out that it doesn't quite happen that fast, I can tell you right now, my client will, continue it out again. Because we're between a rock and a hard space right now. Because technically, I can't move forward with what I applied for.
If I may,
yes, you may.
sorry, so this was the reason why the office was suggesting as a possibility for both the applicant, or the appellate, or the application, representative from the attorney, and for everybody's sanity here on the board, that it may make sense to, understanding what's at play here, continue this in, for a month or two.
Yeah.
To basically give a little bit more time, recognizing the council has several weeks between its regular meetings, and, there is a meeting tomorrow night, actually, to talk about zoning amendments. Next week, we'll be talking about the demolition delay ordinance, and to give another 2 regular council meetings, so if the city council is able to conclude its process on that, the zoning amendment itself, could be done in either 1 or 2 meetings is more typical. But that would push it several weeks out from now before that was closed, and so we were thinking that it would make sense to continue this particular matter out to say June in order to allow that process to complete itself. Leave it to you and, everybody here to determine how that should be resolved. But we thought that by pushing this out past that termination by the city council, presumably in the coming weeks, it's not a particularly complicated question, that would then save everybody the time, one way or the other, of going down this rabbit hole, recognizing, I think as Greg has helped us to illuminate, we do have an, idiosyncrasy here, which is that 48 does make it what I'll call retroactively back to the date, first advertisement, and that puts the applicant or everybody else sort of in limbo. So all that being said, it might still have effect no matter what your determination is here. And for that reason, I agree with Jared that it may make sense to continue this particular issue of the appeal out past that point.
So I think we need to figure out if we're going to have a motion to continue this, whether that makes sense and whether that works for the applicant. In this case, it's actually it's Stephanie who's come in with the appeal, whether that is acceptable to you as well. So who'd like to begin this conversation?
Well, I'll just say, and I think that I've heard tonight, my big concern is that if the zoning ordinance passes, that, it still wouldn't impact this building. But I've heard the land use people say that's not how it works, that if the zoning passes, that it would move, this appeal for this building.
So if I could, are you referring to the offer? I'm sorry, is that a reference to our input or the legal?
Well, I've been listening to.
Oh, okay, the collective,
Talk
got it.
about this.
Okay.
So the question is that application far enough along that if city council changes the rules tomorrow or the next day, whenever it is this application go with the city council, the new rule?
It would go with the new rules.
It was, that was the question.
Yeah.
So I'm fine with that.
And that's what we had talked about, Doug, right? Was basically following that path essentially because.
We originally filed on that.
And again,
My original zoning determination told me to go that path, and we did.
and apologies.
The fact that it came up and
When Greg wants to
I
go.
used to go off the book.
That's right, I wanna go.
I didn't want that.
Greg wants to go to Washington.
Apologies if
It's like,
I myself was not, unfortunately, I apologize, involved with the original discussion with the zoning administrator. I only know after the determination was made. I thought that was a reasonable reading of the ordinance based on the 3 categories noted in the sheets. However, again, it's up to the board here how you want to handle it. Obviously, the appealing party, the applicant, has the material in hold essentially. Either way, you want to handle that. It just might be, close the matter one way or the other in a couple of weeks by itself anyway.
how did we get 12 years before it's ever happened?
Yeah, exactly.
12 years.
This is the first time.
Well, I mean, I'm perfectly willing to, if the applicant is willing to move to
Okay,
continue this, I'll,
so let's do that.
Again, I'm fine on that.
I'm glad we heard from Doug, because I don't want to railroad,
But
anybody.
it sounds like,
We're not railroad.
all right, sounds like.
I'll make a
way ahead of
motion,
us.
I'll make a motion to continue. Now, the question's what date?
June 23rd.
June 23rd, and just so the public knows, the corrected ordinance, whatever you wanna call it, is up for hearing tomorrow. So, so they're on schedule, they should be able to get through this time. That
Yes,
should be plenty of time.
yes. And we were keeping in mind in offering that potential timeframe, again, leave it to you all parties to decide.
Yeah.
We were just thinking that would allow sufficient timeframe based on our understanding of the council
Okay.
schedule to do the road.
And that's my motion, June 23rd. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's been seconded. All right, so we're gonna have some discussion on this motion, yeah. Any deliberation here? Anybody would like any further deliberation? I would just like to say, since I've been on the slide here, that this is one of those things I'd just like to vote yes on, but I'm not a lawyer and I don't ever recall voting to appeal the zoning administrator. Something like that. I would appreciate some legal input. I realize we've had a lot of legal input here, but
We don't agree.
so I'm kind of glad we're waiting a little bit to decide this, and I'm hoping the city council makes it go away soon. So, and I'm glad that the applicant is here too, represented, and is saying all the right things, so. Anyway, so let's go for a vote now. So we'll go down the row here and see who's in favor of the motion. Mr. Bennett,
Yes,
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Hagerman.
Yeah.
And I vote yes. It's for the affirmative, it passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. That's all 4 hearings.
Yeah, I don't think I lost money or something.
It could be historic. Wasn't until it was 75 years.
you were on the council. Were you on council?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
I'm past my flashbacks.
I mean, it's something we wanna talk about. If we have.
So is there a document that is like this? Refers to the.
That's 1984. So,
The last
item on the agenda,
Is which?
Parker.
Oh, sorry, there was a vote to continue that, there at a request of the applicant.
Because there's only 4 of us here tonight, they want 5 for a full vote.
To get a variance on the TI too, so they can. When,
I'm sorry, you might have missed that.
May, what's it go, May 12th?
Sorry, that is, May 12th, yeah.
All right, you can submit written comments too, anytime.
Oh, I can?
Yeah.
To you all?
Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
Well, that was interesting anyways.
All right,
Have a good night.
thank you.
So great.
yeah, no, so that's, you wanna get into this, or do you wanna close the hearing and I can?
Yeah, let's close the hearing.
Hearing,
Well, I have one item, which is, because of the Madison Street thing, I'd like to do a rule working with Jennifer Blanchet on dimensions for drawing, so I don't have to keep saying this. Again, I get it, I don't wanna make them hire an architect for
Oh,
something,
you're right.
but it would save a lot of time. Okay,
When you say a rule, do you mean a
a rule.
policy and procedure in the zoning board?
I don't wanna go to the zone, I don't wanna go to the city council.
Oh, no.
So cool.
That's,
Yeah.
by
All right,
rule,
well-
I assume you mean a change to the ZBA's policies and procedures.
Yeah.
Okay, good, just, so Gretchen, please capture that. So you volunteered to go work with,
I'll, you know,
I can work together, I mean, we've seen, like, pointed out even a couple of things that are more technical things, like rotating the page sizes. or
yeah,
how
whatever you get, whatever you.
Basic
Jennifer
things
wants.
that will make it.
I have-
Just save us time.
I have another one, which is PDFs, please, no MSGs. I mean, some of these files the guy put in, I couldn't open them, you have to download Microsoft Outlook, I don't wanna
Yeah.
do that. So.
All right, so we wanna go to adjourn and.
No, we have a couple topics. One is we have to approve the minutes of March 24th.
Okay,
And I had to criticize the minute takers.
You have what?
I had to criticize the minute taker. I made a mistake.
She did. What did she do?
She put the approval of the minutes was from ninth. Did I make a mistake? It was the April, oh, I don't know. No.
when was the last time you met?
It was the motion was to approve the minutes of the March 24th meeting,
And it said
but
May.
it was the March 24th meeting, so it should have been May 10th meeting,
Not March 10th.
right?
Yeah,
Did I-
March 10th. You just said, yeah, you said.
It's-
Yeah.
You said May 10th.
So there's a scrivener's error, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Scrivener's error.
So would that change? Is there any other change?
No, I thought they were fine,
Is there a motion to approve?
so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, they're approved. Okay, couple things. One is, it's become challenging to put meetings together here when we don't find out if people are coming until the last moment. Because then all of a sudden we don't have a quorum and some of our applicants need to disappear. And I guess Andy is trying to put out a new thing, which is, please let people know in advance. Don't just wait for the staff report to come out. Just if you know you're not gonna be there, let people know. In fact, you even said if you're gonna come, don't bother telling me, just let me know if you're not.
Yeah, if you don't mind if I just speak to very
Yeah,
briefly,
go ahead.
you may have noticed in Caitlin's last email or two, last meeting or two, right? The piece in the email, as we normally have a template we follow, right, is usually she would say, let us know if you're gonna be there or not, right? Unfortunately, we found too many times, unfortunately, and this is multiple volunteer boards we work with, we just don't get a whole lot of responses all the time. It's not all coherent and clear, right? So we're still chasing people around between the meetings. We actually think it's a lot more efficient for everybody if each individual person who's volunteering with the board, we all can see the dates on the calendar, they're the regular dates and so forth. If we just rely upon every member to let the chair and the staff know whether or not you're gonna be here or not, it makes it a lot easier going forward. The expectation is you're here for every meeting unless you let us know, in which case it's fine. But we know in that case, what it does is it's, and this from the office's time frame anyways, I can't support the notion that I and my staff continue to spend a significant amount of time chasing people around for simple things. We have zoning to work on and whatnot, so it's a lot more efficient if everybody just lets us know in their individual capacity.
That's perfectly fair.
And I would add to that, not just like the next meeting, if you know you're gonna be away 3 weeks from now,
Yeah.
let people know.
Yeah.
Cause
The earlier we know, the earlier the chair can prepare and the staff can, we help to line up things like, is there a continuance request already lined up? Sometimes we actually reach out to an applicant and get them to request or agree to a continuance to avoid issues. So part of the reason we ask for that early notice is it allows us to plan even like a meeting or two out, so there's not a calamity at that point, so.
So the other thing I wanted to mention is there is that meeting tomorrow night. I don't know if people, any of you folks are planning on going. I plan on sitting in, it's a public hearing, but it's at the planning board has to do a public hearing on all new zoning articles and I guess it's a city council together with, is it all the city council or just the?
No.
It's posted as the planning development subcommittee of the council, which is 3 of the 11. However, these items, some of these items are treated as committee of the whole, meaning all the councilors could attend and, chime in if they'd like to. All that being said, I leave that to the council's process, but it is typically in Newburyport, it's been treated since the entire time I've been here as a joint public hearing. The ordinance refers to it as a joint public hearing. And so it's the city council. I think it's a great practice, but the city council meets with the planning board as opposed to having that in isolation, planning board in a vacuum. They discuss it together. So if you're interested in following that discussion tomorrow night, we suspect there'll be some interest. They'll talk about these 3 amendments I've just thrown.
And it's a public, is it a public hearing?
It's a hearing.
Yeah.
So if any of us has something we would like to say during the public comment period, we could do so.
Correct. I think based on talking with the 2 co-chairs, so to speak, one being the planning development committee chair of the city council, the other one being the planning board chair. That the expectation here is that all 3 of the sponsors will present their ordinances first. And just so that there's a coherent organization evening for efficiency, there'll be one public comment period for things that night, rather than going back and forth,
For all of.
because that would be very, disorienting for folks and problematic. So they're gonna have the presentations first, these amendments, and then take it from there, with obviously having public comment, take it from there as to whether or not they deliberate on each one of them, whether they're able to move along each one, or whether they need to have further discussion on each one in different, parsing off separately.
I just want to alert people in case you're interested.
Well, let's go over which 3 they are, so that Greg knows, because he was out of town. So, I mean, the one that I was involved in is the 218.
Aesthetics.
The findings, it's the findings. And again, I already wrote them a letter a month ago. So I don't plan on testifying again. The point is, it's kind of like the rule for the dimensions. I don't want to have to keep explaining to applicants the same thing every time. We are allowed to take into account affordability. It's not a black and white rule, it's just a factor. We took it into account on Erie Avenue. It was not determinative, but we did take into account. And the same thing that, what I call the don't say gay thing. We are looking at appearance, we're looking at visual impact. It isn't just massing. So, and the cases say we can do that. That's it. That's all I had on that one. Okay, what's the next one?
Well, the first, you want to cover the first one, because that.
First one is the minor contributing one, which is.
I said what I had to say. I don't know that it's helpful for me to even go and say that. I don't know.
But, and so if we just, like the woman said, finally baseball is baseball.
Yeah, I'll ask the chairs. I can ask the chairs if they think it's helpful. Because I don't really want to take people down a rabbit hole of 12 years if I don't have to. And then, the Plum Island thing, that was corrected, right? No, that's the FAR. I'm sorry.
That's, yeah.
Okay, that one, just so you guys know, that came different. That we haven't talked about that one, I don't think. That is a change to the dimensional tables sponsored by 2 new counselors. Counselor Delay and Counselor Track. And including in the title and in the whereas conflict, it's all about preserving. It's another way that they think would preserve starter homes. That's the term they use. The problem is in the case law, there's no definition of starter homes. What they need is smaller homes. That's it, size, it means size. Right? And so if you look at the proposal, it's a tweak to R2 and R3 districts, I think, where they're lowering the height limit. Theory that it's too high out in the.
Yeah, some 35 to 25.
Yeah. And that they're putting for the first time an FAR limitation, which we never had in Newburyport on the mainland, only had on Plum Island. Other cities do have. I did go to the hearing last week, so they had a hearing, just a city council on that. And a lot of builders were there, brokers too, but it's the builders that don't always show up. Brokers always show up, not the builders. Builders showed up. And bottom line, they said 0.25 is too low. Jennifer Blanchet also told that to the sponsors, 0.25, because it would apply in all R2 districts, and our R2 zoning is not fine-grained enough to deal with the difference between Joppa, the South End and Turkey Hill or whatever. So maybe like on Erie Avenue, I looked at that case and so did Ken. I think we ended up approving more than. We've always,
every mention of station, what we've done on here, Erie and Harding.
Yeah.
We all wound up greater than 0.25.
right, and so we told Jennifer that we thought the planning board needs to know that the reality of. You know, what you're doing is it doesn't actually match what we've been doing. Let alone existing conditions in the south end where they're at like 0.5. Those houses are much bigger in relation to the lot. So on that one. I haven't submitted anything, I haven't said anything. We could,
But my comment tomorrow night is on FAR is likely to be, I'm glad you're thinking about it. I'm glad you're working on it. Don't try to do it too quickly. And I'll mention the ones we did on Erie and Harding. I do think it would be useful. Tool to have, but if you set it too low. You know, it's one of these things like, it's already pre-existing non-conforming, and so it just intensifies.
well,
To me, where it really becomes a trick is if if it's below and somebody wants to go over and it's a variance now. That to me is, and I don't know how to say that easily tomorrow night.
and just so you know, the builders and the brokers. They're concerned about new buildings, they weren't really focused on what we're.
Really?
Yeah, like, you know, Jay Caswell and Chris Courier. Are concerned that it will kill their ability to make a profit. If they can only, because the land prices aren't gonna go down,
Yeah,
right? People are still gonna ask for enormous amounts of money for a lot. There aren't many lots left where you can do new construction, but there are some. And they also, Chris Courier especially was upset about, you wanna make sure basement was excluded. There's an amendment that I
I've done
saw.
that now, you know.
Yeah, they've done that now, but the point is, those details need more work.
Yeah, I hope they don't just give up though. I do think it's useful for them to work. I think they seem in such a rush. I hope they would do their homework and develop something over a period of months that really makes sense relative to the projects we've been struggling with.
There's another one I noticed, Andy, I might as well say it while we're sweating in here, is they put in an exemption for ADUs, but they didn't put in a square footage exemption. So the ADU is supposed to only be 900 square foot. But if they were adopted that amendment, as I saw it today, someone could come in, get an ADU that's, 3,000 square feet and the tail wags the dog, it would be entirely exempted from FAR. That can't be what they want.
You need an existing ADU that is that size, because
No.
you can't qualify as an ADU unless you're 900 square feet or half the size of the principal.
Yeah, but it doesn't, but,
Sorry, what am I missing?
uh,
Cause to qualify as an ADU, you have to be under that size threshold, right?
yeah, but it
So,
doesn't, the size threshold is not mentioned in what they define as an ADU, and that definition of an ADU could change. Also, someone could convert, you're right, they could convert an existing carriage house.
Mhm.
And that doesn't make any sense to exempt an enormous carriage house from ADU, from FAR.
Okay, gotcha.
You gotta say the 900 square feet, because that's what you need.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the first, well, I guess that's just off in the first instance, I definitely think that we've referenced in that piece. That language was sufficiently referenced, I think the 900 square feet or 50%, but I think.
Also,
the
you should
existing
know that EOHLC and the legislature is under pressure to raise that size. Why? Because the brokers in Massachusetts want it bigger.
Understood.
You cannot assume it's gonna stay at 900.
It could be codified with greater specificity. Yeah.
Before we break, I just want to say, Jared, I really appreciated hearing earlier this evening. The struggles you went through with the city council trying to figure out how to pass that stuff in 2014, which has basically become what we all now live with. It was fascinating.
Actually, I was looking back in the minutes, Megan Kinsey, she finished really high in the voting. She was at large, but she only did one term, she didn't stick around. But I was looking at her testimony from back in March of 2014, she's like, talking to people in town. If we pass this thing, we're socialists, and if we don't pass it, we're barbarians. So that was the climate at the time.
I can imagine.
So you have to realize we grabbed onto this 1984 National Register so we wouldn't argue. That was deliberately why we did it. We're like, this thing's been in place for decades. Let's not relitigate what's on the list. If it's on the list, it counts.
Anyway, it's fascinating. are we looking for a motion to adjourn? Are we there?
Yeah, I mean, for good or bad, you're gonna be dealing with B and C more often. Do you, A won't affect you very much. but,
B and C, what?
These amendments here on the screen, just,
Oh,
you may definitely, you may wanna track regardless of where those end up, only because there are some tweakings being made to them, and you as a board will most likely see the effects of.
I wish they'd ask us, you know, it's weird, they don't reach out to the group who's struggling with these issues on a day-to-day basis. I find that odd.
Well, when I saw these come through, right, and I looked at B and a little bit, I think of its earlier form, I was actually a little disappointed. And I know
That what?
that it was even there. If anybody came here to see how we've been taking these giant projects and bringing them down
Yeah.
into livable, fit into the neighborhood.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of work, and I looked at that, I'm like, you don't need that, you got us. We've been doing this for.
You may not always have a strong board.
I
No, but
know.
thanks for saying that. That was kind of the point. And as this thing has gone on, I've been making it again and again. It's like, if we screwed something up in the last year on this, tell us. I don't think we have.
Which one,
I think we did pretty well.
right?
I don't think it's us. I think that there's been a lot of outcry on those streets. We've seen it here, and they're just trying to be responsive to that.
But I mean, just thinking back to Erie, I remember there were some neighbors who were like, you should only approve a one-story building.
Yeah.
I told them, they said, that's not reasonable. We're gonna make it
And no
smaller.
one seemed to object when you said that.
They didn't burn down the building, but you know.
What I found interesting is the only one that flew through was when Scott Brown came in with one. Remember, they had a detached garage on Erie. And it looked smaller. He did a good job of making it smaller. It was way over 0.25.
Oh, yeah.
But so it's.
It's funny you say that because he actually testified last week and he said, if you exclude garages, you should if they're detached because the mass would be less. He said that. Exactly what you're saying.
Anyway, I just. It's an interesting city here. All in favor of adjourning? Aye. We're adjourned.